Bella Bella is a fishing village on BC's central coast. Here, life and livelihood have always depended on the sea. The only way in or out is by boat or plane. We're here as guests of the Heiltsuk Nation. Our guide is Frank Brown, a hereditary chief.
My Heiltsuk name is Gladly Asila. I serve as a senior advisor to the Indigenous Leadership Initiative.
He's guiding us inside the territory of his people, which lies in the heart of the Great Bear Rainforest. This is the largest remaining tract of temperate coastal rainforest, where the life of land and sea meet like few places on Earth. Our first stop is the Bella Bella hatchery, part of an effort to boost salmon populations. At one time, a Hudson's Bay fur trading post stood nearby, but it has long since disappeared, enveloped by the surrounding forest. Along the creek, sea otters race by. The voracious fur trade nearly brought them to the brink. They've since made a comeback.
I think we can find out a little bit more over time, you know.
But for the salmon, it's a different story.
This pond here would be full of salmon, so you wouldn't have to go very far.
Like many here, Kelly Brown has childhood memories of better days when the creeks and rivers teemed with salmon. He's the director of the Heiltsuk Integrated Resource Management Department. Pacific salmon have been in decline for decades, and in recent years, they witnessed a sudden and profound event.
What happened 8 years ago?
In 2014, we're not sure what happened.
It collapsed.
But the salmon return collapsed even in this salmon enhancement program. And that happened for every system throughout our territory. And so something phenomenal happened in the ocean.
Brown oversees the Guardians who monitor salmon across their territory.
We have Guardian watchmen that will come into every salmon system bearing stream that we have, ones that aren't bearing, that normally would be bearing, and see whether or not there's salmon running in those systems to inform whether or not we're comfortable with opening up a commercial fishery or even a food fishery for our people. It would have been nice to have our grandchildren here to be able to be fishing the food for the community, and we're hardly even able to do that now.
Across the channel, deeper into the rainforest, is Kunsut. It means place of many salmon. Here we find Josh Vickers, waiting among the spawning beds.
We have pinks in here, we have cohos in here, we have sockeye, and a little bit of chum so far.
He's one of a team of Guardians monitoring the salmon run. He just counted 1,000 pink salmon in the estuary. Not bad, but still far from what it was before.
I'm happy to see this, but historically there was a lot more.
He and other Guardians are carrying out the vital field work that combines science with traditional knowledge. Measuring water quality and temperature and salinity.
12.
Counting and tracking the migration of each salmon species. Gathering key information needed to plan for next year's fishing season.
Hang on, I'll grab that. Yeah, it gets colder. Right now we're in peak salmon, peak spawning season. Yeah, it's gonna be a little bit of a slick, so just watch yourself. When we're up here creek walking, what we're looking for is live salmon and dead salmon, and what species are at what place.
In previous years, what would we see here?
So like now we see maybe about 7,000 pinks, whereas before they saw like 700,000.
Using ingenuity to manage salmon has deep roots here. On their way home, the Guardians pass this ancient salmon trap, one of many engineered long ago to harness the tides this time of year.
We traveled according to the seasons, starting with a herring, and then we would move into salmon and bottom fish, and we moved all throughout our entire territory.
As marine agriculturalists, they tended to the sea that in turn tended to them.
There were many, many villages throughout our whole territory, and almost every river system in our territory was utilized by our people. But when the newcomers arrived, they put us on these little plots of land known as Indian reserves.
Colonialism brought catastrophe here.
There was a premeditated plan to sever our relationship from the land so that they could get access to the resources and the bounty of the land and the sea.
At contact, the Heiltsuk numbered upwards of 20,000 people across 50 villages. Then came harrowing waves of smallpox and influenza. Their people were brought to the brink. At one point, fewer than 200 remained. The horrors and injustices of the colonial era continued: residential schools, the loss of the big house, the banning of the potlatch. Their culture and language forced underground.
The cornerstone of our society is the potlatch system, and that was our system of governance and how resources and wealth was redistributed through the community. The idea to separate us from our place was devastating. It's created all kinds of social issues, health issues, mental health issues, and even impacting our spirits.
Many of the old villages have faded into the landscape, but there are signs of renewal. In Bella Bella, a landmark of the past has been restored to life. This is the big house, the heart of the community. It's the home of the potlatch and a place of gathering that was destroyed in the colonial era.
There's a lot of intergenerational pain, and there's a lot of intergenerational brilliance.
Over a decade in the making, these form-line house posts were painstakingly designed, carved and painted, and tell of the deep origins and resilience of a people. Chief Frank's daughter, Gatawas, is with Heiltsuk Climate Action. She says the strength of the future draws from the well of the past.
We're working really hard to connect all of those dots back.
Morning.
Yo!
Those innate values, she says, empower her people to fight climate change.
We're really calling on our Ambit, our ancestors, so that we're in alignment with our Goilas, with our Heiltsuk laws and ways of existing in relationship with the land and with the water. And so I see there's a lot of opportunity with climate action to tie in all of our teachings, because really it's about that original existence.
Indigenous Guardians are both old and new. The formal network has only been around for about 5 years, but their connection to the land goes back hundreds of generations. Indigenous people have monitored, managed, and cared for the land and the sea for thousands of years, living sustainably. The Guardian program, operated now, is funded by the federal government, and each of the 70 Guardian programs is established and run locally, as distinct as the First Nations they represent and the issues they face. And the effects of climate change are being felt everywhere they work, including on Canada's East Coast. As dawn arrives in Unama'ki, land of the fog, a rite of fall is underway. The annual moose harvest for the Mi'kmaq. In the highlands of Cape Breton, Nova Scotia,
You can adjust your seat if you like.
our guides are Keith Christmas
And as we were driving in, I just kept checking the tree line, and nothing.
and Clifford Paul. Both are from the Unama'ki Institute of Natural Resources.
When you drive in, you're looking for heads or ears.
They're taking us on a trek up these muddy logging roads into the boreal forest.
And Cape Breton is just a beautiful spot. See a dark spot there, but that's not a moose.
It requires patience. Moose are elusive by nature.
It's pretty deceiving, some of these spots out there.
But the signs are there if you know where to look.
That's why you see a lot of droppings here. You can tell where they were eating to,
How can you tell?
because they're eating these tips.
Oh, they'll eat the fresh.
Yeah, they're eating these
Road.
tips here. Just as the buffalo is important to the Plains Indians, so is the moose to the Mi'kmaq.
Clifford has to contend with a different kind of conservation problem.
How many moose would be in the highlands here, do you think?
The last estimate was 2,400, give or take. So from a Mi'kmaq perspective, a healthy herd is dependent on a healthy ecosystem. So 2,400, we think it's good because the carrying capacity of the ecosystem serves the population better than having a hyper-abundant population.
Moose weren't always so abundant. A century ago, the population was wiped out. Another species from Alberta was introduced, and with no natural predators left, it flourished.
So today, in the absence of wolves in Unama'ki, in Nova Scotia, what's going to keep the population in check is the humans, the human interaction.
Without hunting, moose would overrun the highlands and overfeed on the saplings that regenerate the boreal forest. Traditionally, the Mi'kmaq would head inland to hunt this time of year, a way of life disrupted by colonialism.
I have the right to do this, but more importantly, I have the responsibility. And the Mi'kmaq fought so hard for those rights. They fought incredibly hard for those rights. And then we can put that in a sample.
And how many were in your hunting party?
That's where the Guardians come in. Hannah Martin is with the Confederacy of Mainland Mi'kmaq.
It's a really important time for us as Mi'kmaq people to be on the land here in Unama'ki and harvesting this resource. It's more than just a harvest, it's everything for us.
When a moose is harvested, the antlers are measured, samples are collected, details from the hunters are recorded, all vital information to track and monitor the health of the population.
We really treat the moose, the salmon, everything with respect and with honor.
Down from the highlands and along the sweeping coast of Cape Breton, our guides lead us to a sacred place.
This place has much spiritual significance. We're surrounded by rock. The rocks are the grandfathers. They're the keepers of the stories.
Tucked along these limestone cliffs is Glooskap's Cave. For the Mi'kmaq, this is the center of the universe.
The stories, the landscape, the seascape, the legends, they all come together here.
It's a place of healing and renewal, where Clifford acts as a guide, leading treks by land, sharing a golden moment of his first experience here.
And when I showed up, I couldn't believe the light that was shining through me, the spiritual connection.
The whole Cape is now an Indigenous protected and conserved area. Albert Marshall, a revered Mi'kmaq elder, joins us on the trip. This is his first visit to the cave in decades, and his mind turns to the troubles of the present.
What have we done to this very source of life in which we all depend upon? Even as we speak, water and air and soil has no protection whatsoever. It is considered a commodity.
In the Mi'kmaq language, the duty to live sustainably is captured in one word.
Nedukulimk is actually a guiding principle as to how we go through life. Nature has rights, humans have responsibility. And that is something I believe, and I truly, honestly believe, that is very much inherent in the Aboriginal ways of thinking. With all the knowledge that we have, we are drowning in all this knowledge. But I think in fact we are starving in wisdom.
If we are starving in wisdom, what can non-Indigenous people learn from your ancestral knowledge of the land?
If a group of people in this hemisphere for thousands and thousands and thousands of years can coexist in harmony with nature, shouldn't we be smart enough to think there's got to be some lessons in there?
A view of the world that animates First Peoples across the continent, from Unama'ki to the Great Bear Rainforest, and throughout the depth of history here in Heiltsuk territory. These channels and inlets harbor countless memories of those who came before, like these figures carved in stone.
We now know that our people have been here for the last 700 generations, or over 14,000 years.
Oral traditions tell of a place where, long ago, the Heiltsuk found refuge beyond the reach of the ice.
My uncle told me that that's where our people originally came from.
Those stories drew a team of archaeologists from the Hakai Institute and the University of Victoria to Tricket Island in 2017. There, they unearthed one of the oldest settlements ever discovered in the Americas, dating back to the last ice age. Artifacts suggest those here were highly skilled hunters of sea mammals who later turned to fishing, an adept and adaptable people who survived and thrived in the extremes of time. And among the oldest finds, the charred remnants of a 14,000-year-old hearth and a fire that burned so long ago.
We've waited a long time to see this happen. This is our sacred house, a house of honor.
In 2019, the Heiltsuk opened their big house, the first on their territory in more than 120 years. A shining moment in a cultural revival.
We are a resilient people. We did stand on the abyss of near extinction and an annihilation, but our generations now are the ones that are gaining strength. It's through our young people that are students of the culture, working with our elders and our knowledge keepers, that are leading the way. We will continue to exist on our lands for the next 14,000 years. I believe that we as the native people of this land have been the voice of reason around the devastation of natural resources. It really goes down to values.